folks. This is the Factivist report for Sunday, the 12th of March. And we're going to be talking about a new pandemic sweeping the nation called fascism. And it may look like Trump and DeSantis are the only ones, but they are just the symptoms of a disease spreading across the nation like wildfire. Be aware, folks. Here's Dave.
So if you remember The Matrix and you remember Agent Smith, he's just one of those guys. So this is just one part. Trump is one part. DeSantis is one part. They are the quote unquote de facto leaders of this, but this has been going on for decades. And now these groups they're poised to make their move hardcore based on what DeSantis has been able to do in Florida and what Trump was able to do with the country. So
I just want to say this: The Matrix is a movie. Just be aware of that, okay?
Just so you know, yeah.
With that shit, okay? I know how people get with that shit. I do. But the other thing is, you know what? We have to look at Governor Abbott in Texas as well. I mean, he's not quite where Florida is yet, but DeSantis himself has stated that Florida and Texas are leading the war against the left.
But there are other agents as well already in office. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, she's poised to do that too. Glenn Youngkin, he's another one.
Yeah.
So just because you're not one of the front runners doesn't mean that you're not pushing the narrative. And that's a big message that we're going to try to get across on this one. So the very first story is by Tim Craig. That was February of this year. GOP lawmakers follow Florida's lead with DeSantis copycat bills. Now, DeSantis was in the House of Representatives. He sponsored, I don't even remember how many, dozens upon dozens of bills. None of his bills were passed.
He was the Florida House, though, right?
He was in the Florida House, yes. The only way he could get anything passed is to bully his legislature and just hammer things through. By the way, law be damned. He's done a lot of things, and people have shot him down and all of that.
He bullies his own legislature now as governor.
Right.
He does. They rubber stamp literally everything he does.
So let me see here. I just want to touch on a couple of things here. Here we go. So gay rights activists believe that DeSantis helped inspire dozens of new state proposals that seek to regulate transgender healthcare, drag show performances. By the way, this is not about people in costume. This is about eliminating gender identity. By the way, Mike Pence tried to do it in Indiana years ago. Or public accommodations for transgender Americans. So far in 2023, the ACLU has identified 278 proposals in state legislatures, not just in Florida, that it considers anti-LGBTQ bills, already equaling the total of number of such bills filled in 2022. And by the way, this is March.
Right. Can I just say this? I just saw a video on Twitter with Karine St. Pierre there from the White House.
Yes.
The White House is actually tracking 499 bills.
Right.
So
this was back in February.
Right. So, whatever it is, they grow exponentially almost overnight. And some of them do not get reported. You don't know until you go looking.
Right. They might not even be on the record yet.
Right.
Right. So meanwhile, PEN America, a freedom expression advocacy group, has so far identified 81 proposals that it believes are attempts to stifle creativity and academic freedom in education. About 20 of these proposals appear to be nearly a carbon copy. By the way, ALEC does the same thing, of a law enacted last year in Florida that bans LGBTQ topics from elementary school classrooms. Okay. So also, Deb knows about Moms for Liberty. According to Moms for Liberty, a Florida-based advocacy group with close ties to DeSantis, lawmakers in a half dozen states are debating parental rights legislation that closely mirrors a bill that Florida's governor signed into law restricting what teachers can say about gender and sexual orientation. And Deb and I have gone through this over and over again on this channel. We talked to teachers and educators. As you know, I have a master's degree in education. I kind of dropped out about 10 years ago because it wasn't for me. But the point being that you're not talking about gender identity. You're talking about acceptance of other kids and not bullying people and not intimidating people and acceptance of others. That's.
You should also know that in retaliation, I think we talked about this last week, in retaliation for Disney speaking out against his Don't Say Gay bill, DeSantis has taken over regulation of Disney and has actually put the co-founder of Moms for Liberty on that oversight board.
Right.
There's a reason for that. There's a reason for that because Disney routinely has Gay Family Week and stuff like that. I promise you that's going to become a problem for Disney. By the way,
Again, that's First Amendment rights, and that's the right for a business to conduct their business the way they want to. And if people don't agree with it, they don't have to go to that business.
And if government you don't agree with it, just don't go to Disney World the week of Gay Family Week. How's that? Can you manage to figure that one out for yourselves?
So again, this is the Hill. 15 other Don't Say Gay style bills are cropping up nationwide. I'm sure there are others. As Deb said, not all of them get posted right away. Now, ACLU, this is a commentary on how they fought the Stop Woke Act, and this will continue. I know Deb actually said that in West Virginia, this is a different issue, but West Virginia, they made gender affirming care illegal. What was the exact?
Yeah, they banned it for regardless of what, they banned it for anyone under 18. Some states are now saying they want to ban it until the age of 26, which is essentially
banning it.
Banning it totally, to be honest with you.
Right. A lot of people on Twitter are talking about, is Trump better? Is DeSantis better? Neither of them are acceptable. Let's just get that out of the way. But here's a story about right now. What's happening is that the rats are fleeing the Trump ship, and they are now, some of them are going to DeSantis for endorsements. They're running to him, just like DeSantis ran to Trump for a Trump endorsement. The best, the candidates that did the best, we're talking about guys like Ron Johnson. We're talking about J.D. Vance. They got endorsements from both. They try to stay away from the fray and not take one side or the other. Because in all honesty, all of these Republicans are basically the same. So we have winning candidates that both Trump and DeSantis endorsed. You had J.D. Vance, Ron Johnson, Mike Lee from Utah, and Kevin Stitt from Oklahoma, and Sarah Huckabee Sanders from Arkansas, which the next time that those come up, Kevin Stitt and Sarah Huckabee Sanders are absolutely horrendous.
Yeah, Sarah Huckabee Sanders just gutted child labor laws in the state of Arkansas.
Yep, but don't worry, they're worried about, or they're worried about your kids.
Yeah. Yep.
So that they, so they can hurt themselves on the job and
that's called indoctrination, by the way.
Yeah. And as I said, here's a story by Politico. This was as early as August of last year. Florida Republicans tether themselves to DeSantis, even without his support. Now, this is Florida. So if DeSantis becomes popular nationally and actually, God help us, wins the presidency, we're done. It's over. Now, we're not saying that if he loses, we win. Please understand that. This system is right now in serious danger. And I know what you guys are saying. Oh, you guys are talking like Democrats. This is not about Democrats and Republicans. This is about the destruction of the entire system. The Republicans will take this entire system down through fascism.
I just do want to say this, though. There is one party that is not doing any of that, and it is the Democrats.
Right.
Yeah, I'm going to say it. I'm tired of having to equivocate what I'm all about. I'm a fucking Democrat for life now. I'm done. Okay, yeah. I'm done. All right. You don't like it? I don't care. How's that?
Yeah. All I'm saying is right.
I know who takes care of me. I know who's taking care of my friends. I have a transgender child. I know who's taking care of my transgender child. And it's certainly not the Green Party, and it's certainly not the Republican Party. I'm a Democrat.
There are very few exceptions. Deb's already pointed them out. We've pointed them out a ton of times. Kristen Sinema. We've already pointed out Joe Manchin, who, by the way, was congratulated on helping with that bill that we just talked about. There are people out there that say they're Democrats that aren't. They need to be gone. So we can't just say vote blue no matter who, but it's very close. Eric Adams is another one. He's coming dangerously close. There are a couple other guys, blue dogs. That's what primaries are for.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
And I'm saying right now, Sinema's already taking care of herself by going independent. It's going to be Ruben Gallego, Sinema, or God forbid, Carrie Lake is going to run. But with the way I feel about at this point, Manchin, at this point,
he's a Republican. He's a Republican.
He called himself a Democrat on Face the Nation last week. He called himself an American. So you know what? Let me just tell you what I feel. Could that seat go to a Republican if he's primaried? It absolutely could. But you know what? Joe Manchin has blocked almost every progressive bill that has been put forward by this administration for the past 2 years. Losing him would not be a big deal. He's a power broker gamer. That's all he is.
Yep.
That's all he is. He is not a public servant.
By the way, in all honesty, not that we talk that much about Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is a Democrat. He is.
Bernie Sanders gets it.
He gets it. Yeah. He's not a Republican in any sense of the word.
And by the way, when Bernie Sanders ran for president,
yep,
Socialist Alternative endorsed Bernie Sanders. I know, I was there.
Right.
Okay.
So here's just a recap of some of the things that DeSantis has done. Some of them Deb may have already said. This is just a list of 10 things that that DeSantis did, and not all of them I really even knew about. Hold on. Let me see here. There we go. Can I get rid of that? No, I don't think I can. So, all right. Number one, a racially motivated attack on citizens' First Amendment rights, national embarrassment, and disaster waiting to happen. Under the pretense of public safety, this law provided legal immunity to people who drove SUVs in a crowd of protesters. Okay. Number two, rubber stamping. Republicans imposed new regulations on social media platforms with fines up to $250,000 a day for deplatforming or censoring politicians. All right. And again, by the way, you're infringing on a company's right to do business the way they want to do it and set their own rules. So the Florida Republicans insisted on a partisan crackdown on mail ballots and the use of drop boxes that Democrats favored in 2020. So they silenced opponents at hearings in Tallahassee. Okay. The unnecessary restrictions will be attacked in court. This is SB 90, which was the legislation to make it harder for Democrats to vote. So, mercy. HB 259 legalized guns in churches that share property with schools and expanded a decades-old preemption of local gun regulations by adding unwritten gun policies, such as verbal instructions to local police officers.
I actually believe that Florida has passed a gun carry law. Open carry, no restrictions, no permits. I really do. I believe that has been signed. I will look it up while you continue to talk.
Yep. So they rammed through a ban on transgender female athletes competing in girls and women's high school and college sports, sticking it into a charter school bill, and that was a former dead bill. So here's another one. Despite billions of dollars from the Biden administration, lawmakers refused to raise jobless benefits for Floridians. $275 a week for a maximum of 12 weeks, lowest of any state. People pretty much know about the vaccine issue with DeSantis pandering to the anti-vaxxer crowd. Lawmakers banned vaccine passports, making a misguided DeSantis executive order permanent, SB 2006, and trampling on counties where the COVID-19 virus had been harder to control, especially in South Florida. Meaning that businesses, schools, and governments cannot force people to prove that they've been vaccinated. And by the way, the United States Postal Service was one of those organizations that was participating in that. Here's one that is minor, but and this will be what I end on: vaping. Okay. They raised the age to smoke and vape from 18 to 21 in SB 1080, but it's already in federal law. What the bill really did was wipe out stronger local regulations to curtail marketing on the and sale of tobacco and vaping products. To no one's surprise, makers of the e-cigarettes are reliable donors to campaigns in Florida.
So
So,
constitutional carry. Constitutional carry is set to become a law in Florida. That
okay.
means it does not prohibit citizens who can legally possess a firearm from carrying handguns openly or concealed, and no state permit is required, and no training and no safety training is required.
Don't worry, they care about your kids by banning books and not allowing costume people to read it to your kids.
As if Florida doesn't already have enough shootings, okay?
Right. Right. If you remember the Pulse shooting and right.
By the way, Trayvon Martin, the right to the stand your ground laws in Florida.
Yeah.
In some states, they have a stand your ground law, but once if the threat is removed, you have to put your gun away. So somebody runs away after threatening you, you have to put your gun away. In Florida, you don't have to do that. That's already a law that was filed with the help of ALEC, by the way.
Right.
Someone threatens you with a weapon, then gets afraid and turns and runs, you can shoot him in the back. And the stand your ground law protects you. That's the way that works.
So we have a couple of officials, former Trump officials, and people who supported Trump and now see that DeSantis is gaining ground. They're looking to form PACs to give this guy money so he can run for presidency. Now,
this guy here?
Yep. Ken Cuccinelli.
He's a loser. Sorry.
Former acting deputy secretary for the Department of Homeland Security. Okay. So he's encouraging Republican Florida Governor Ron DeSantis to pursue the presidency in 2024, announcing recently that rather than support Trump's third bid for the White House, he's launching the Never Back Down PAC, a new political action committee that will support the DeSantis presidential 2024 run.
And by the way, DeSantis was endorsed by Jeb Bush. Oh, joy.
Yep. More groups trying to convince Florida's governor to run, including a prominent Republican activist in New Hampshire.
I got no comments about New Hampshire.
When I see a winner, I'm just going to go with them.
Brilliant.
Okay.
That's exactly what I mean, folks. Yep.
Republican activist Chris Wood. He's all in for Florida Governor Ron DeSantis.
I'm calling DeSantis a firebrand. Okay.
Yep.
I don't need to say this. DeSantis, the only likeness that firebrand has with DeSantis is the word fascism starts with an F too. Ron DeSantis is a fascist. Firebrand is a positive term. The news media needs to stop using that fucking term.
Yep.
People. The news media is a bunch of pussies lately. They need to start exposing these people, not enabling these people.
So Chris Wood, he formed another political action committee called New Hampshire Draft DeSantis.
Yay.
Okay. Among the many people, as Deb said, hoping that the conservative firebrand governor will eventually launch a 2022 GOP presidential campaign. I mean, as Deb said, firebrand to me means someone that fights for the people and speaks truth to power.
AOC firebrand.
Right. And Bernie Sanders forever was a firebrand. Like her or disagree with her, Maxine Waters was a firebrand. Still is. Okay. So this is just another article about that New Hampshire group. All right. Okay, so Deb talked about the Claremont Institute last week. And this is basically a group of lawmaking thugs called the Claremont Sheriffs.
Oh, yay.
Now, this past November, and this is an article by Jessica Pishko from Slate. This was very recently, the last day of February of this year. So I'm going to read a little bit of this, and if Deb is reading ahead, which I know she does a lot, she will see one of her favorite assholes in here.
Oh, yeah. Mark Lamb.
Yep. Oh, there you go. This past November, some of the most controversial sheriffs from around the country gathered for a week at a luxury waterfront hotel in Huntington Beach, California, for what is becoming an annual ritual, the Claremont Institute Sheriff's Fellowship. For the past 2 years, the MAGA aligned think tank, and by the way, now they're turning their sights towards DeSantis.
Yeah, they are taking up residence in Tallahassee to help move that state along, move it along, and declare it a blueprint for other states.
Has hosted a choice selection of county sheriffs, has honored fellows to fill their minds with frothy right-wing intellectualism. That's
an oxymoron.
I know. Hoping these humble, heavily armed servants. I mean, come on now. I hope she's being sarcastic. Will return home newly emboldened to implement pro-authoritarian policies in their local communities. The 2022 class of Claremont Sheriff's Fellows are perhaps even more frightening in their personal ideology than those of 2 years ago. The acceptance letter for the 2022 Claremont Institute Sheriff Fellows thanked each one for upholding the very foundation of Western civilization.
Read white supremacy there, okay?
Yeah. While also promising a $1,200 travel stipend and a $15 honorarium. God. On the last evening of the 6-day training session, Pinal County Sheriff Mark Lamb, who is incredibly dangerous, and he is potentially running for U.S. Senate in Arizona next year.
That would be going against Gallego.
Yeah.
And Cinema.
Right. And hopefully Cinema will take votes away from this guy. Right. So next year, then a 2021 Claremont Sheriff's Fellow received a John Wayne statuette for what Claremont called the American Sheriff Award as part of a closing reception and dinner.
Can I say something about that whole John Wayne thing?
Go ahead.
I've never been a fan of John Wayne, but
I get it.
Pretty sure that John Wayne wouldn't endorse what these guys stand for. I really don't think so. I mean, I could be totally wrong. But
he was a racist, but I don't know if he'd go this far.
Yeah, I don't either. I mean, a lot of those guys were racist back then, but
right.
I just don't. I don't know. I could be wrong. I mean, these assholes probably know more than I do because, like I said, I don't think I've ever watched a John Wayne movie.
So to Florida and to Nikki Fried and to whoever who's listening in that state and in other states, we need to take back school boards. Okay. Most of the school board candidates DeSantis backed in Florida did win.
Yeah. And let me just say this. Don't ever say that we don't criticize the Democrats because frankly, the Democrats,
they lay down
Florida to the wind. Now they're going to have to dig themselves out of a fucking hole. They had a purple state that was a swing state that is now a totally It's totally a laboratory for nationwide fascism. And, you know, their hands-off approach to Florida contributed to that. So now Nikki Fried, unfortunately, has a lot of work to do.
Right.
And it's going to take more than one election to fix it.
It takes more than Nikki Fried, and it also takes more than Max Frost.
Right.
Okay. They consider that a great win. But they let Marco Rubio just stomp Val Demings. They wasted that candidate, and they wasted Charlie Crist.
They did. They did. They did.
Okay, Deb, I have a question for you. Are you ready for President DeSantis?
Oh my God. I don't, you know, it's like the choice between him and Trump is like the choice between cholera and Ebola, you know, as far as I'm concerned. It's like, you know, and then, you know, something, if they go away, we have a whole, you know, a whole House and a whole Senate full of them. Because honestly, even the ones in the Senate who people consider moderate Republicans, if they're not standing up to this, they're complicit. And they're complicit because they want to get reelected. And those kinds of legislators don't do the people any good. All of the Republican Party needs to be purged. I'm going to say it flat out. For the good of society, the Republican Party, we need to beat as many Republicans as we can in 2024.
The next person, I saw it in the article, which we're glossing over a lot of this stuff. There is
I have to read. Okay.
There is a hardcore infrastructure here. Okay. When one person leaves, another person takes their place. Trump is leaving. I doubt if he's really going to be a major player in this election. He's losing support left and right. DeSantis is taking his place. If DeSantis ever step down or whatever, another person will take his place. I can see J.D. Vance, Ron Johnson, Rick Scott. Take your pick. Jim Jordan, Elise Stefanik, whoever.
He's a fucking moron.
Carrie Lake. Carrie Lake isn't going away, by the way.
No, she ain't. She ain't.
Okay. And if you want to go even farther right wing, dear God, you know, Carrie Lake is another scary person.
By the way, anybody who thought that maybe Nikki Haley was a kind of gentler fascist, consider the fact that the first thing she said in the speech was that Ron DeSantis didn't go far enough with "Don't Say Gay." Okay?
Yep.
Remember that.
And on top of that, Deb and I were having a conversation earlier, basically saying that the one thing that Adam Kinzinger and what's her name? Liz Cheney, we agreed with on was J6.
And that's it.
And that's it.
That's it.
Now they stood up.
Every other policy, no, absolutely not.
Right.
Liz Cheney voted in lockstep with Trump 94% of the time before the insurrection. Okay? Understand that. So she is not. She should not be the darling of the Democrats.
Right. And she spoke up. She spoke up that one time. She lost her job for it. But if you speak up a little bit, Mitch McConnell is losing power because he's speaking up a little bit. Mitt Romney, you know, some of these people, and none of these people are moderate Republicans. Right. When people use the word moderate Republican and Mitt Romney in the same sentence, I cringe.
Yeah. So what we're saying is people they don't even like Lindsey Graham, actually. Lindsey Graham, people like Lindsey Graham, Mitt Romney, they're not radical enough for the MAGAs. They're not. They want them to go too.
Right. Okay, so now I'm just going to talk a little bit about DeSantis and his foreign policy. This is his foreign policy. He's giving asylum to Jair Bolsonaro. Now, I wonder what what DeSantis is getting in return. I don't know if it's money. I don't know if it's influence. I don't know what it is.
And by the way, Bolsonaro, in case anyone's not familiar, instigated a J6 type coup in Brazil after he lost the election. Just understand what's going on here, people. Okay.
And for those of you who disagree with us or whatever, and still talk about unity for Julian Assange, Bolsonaro is not his friend by any stretch of the imagination. This is just a short article about the Lincoln Project targeting DeSantis as the worst governor in America.
You have to agree with
and
that.
Trying to fight against him. Now, this is, with Charlie Crist trying to help them. When a Republican group is fighting harder for a Democratic candidate than the Democratic Party is, we have a problem. The Lincoln Project, again, they're Republican, but they're doing the right thing, fighting against a lot of this extremist nonsense.
They also fought against all the misinformation on COVID too.
Right. The very last thing I want to talk about is something that Deb just saw. I saw it too. So Ron DeSantis is talking about rolling back press freedom. And this is in regards to a 1964 United States Supreme Court case. It is the New York Times Company versus Sullivan. This is basically talking about how far someone has to go in terms of defamation if you're in the press. Right now, the law is that you have to show intent, and you have to show intent that you were intentionally trying to deceive or give misinformation. DeSantis wants to get rid of some of that. Hosting a panel on defamation. Most Supreme Court justices want to uphold this, but I know that Uncle Clarence, he would be willing to hear a motion on this. So here's one case. Donald Trump talked about changing libel laws as president. Had a defamation suit against CNN, asked whether or not the high court should reconsider whether Sullivan's standards truly protects the democratic values embodied by the First Amendment. His lawyers called the lawsuit, which accuses the network of unfairly comparing Mr. Trump to Adolf Hitler, and sought $475 million in damages, was a perfect vehicle for revisiting the precedent. So they're looking at all of this stuff.
And what all of this is designed to do is to get the press to back off. That's
yes.
What they're doing here. They're literally using the press to threaten the press.
Yes. Not clear whether or not the court is ready to revisit Sullivan. Two justices on the court, Clarence Thomas and Neil Gorsuch, have indicated willingness to roll back the ruling in written dissents in recent years, but require 2 more votes for a challenge to even be heard.
And you know what? If I were the Supreme Court with their level of respect in this country right now, I'd reject this out of hand.
Yes. Now, here is where I want to go with this. Last June, the court declined to hear a defamation suit brought by a Christian organization against the Southern Poverty Law Center, which had called it a hate group. Now, Justice Thomas dissented, writing that he would grant criteria in this case to revisit the malice standard.
Clarence the Talking Mule.
Yep. So here's what I want to end with. The Southern Poverty Law Center, we have used them as a source for this type of information over and over and over again. They are excellent. They go through their own methodology of how they identify and categorize hate groups in regards to who different groups target, etc. Also, if someone is only seen on social media, the Southern Poverty Law Center does not include them as a hate group because they might just be a hoax and they might just be trying to say that they're more powerful than they actually are.
Right.
It depends on, if you have concrete members of a group committing crimes or, in protests or violence or that kind of stuff.
Violence, etc.
Yep. So the list does not document activism that takes place only online by individual or groups, whether on Facebook, VK, or similar online forums. Major online web forums have in recent years seen their comment sections and registered users grow, but such activity doesn't occur in real life and is thus not reflected in this count. So take that, take that information. 940 active hate groups based on information gathered by the Southern Poverty Law Center's Intelligence Project from hate group publications, citizen reports, law enforcement agency, field sources, web postings, and news reports. Only organizations known to be active, whether that activity includes marches, rallies, speeches, meetings, flyering, publishing literature, criminal acts, among other activities, were counted in this list. Entities that appear only in cyberspace are not included because they're likely to be web publishers falsely portraying themselves as powerful and organized. So what I'm saying is this group is not intentionally trying to deceive anybody.
Right. The Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, does this also, and they do a good job too.
Right. I just wanted, because
but SPLC is
the SPLC was mentioned specifically in this article, so I wanted to address them. But yeah, the ADL does pretty much the same thing, and they conduct their business and research pretty similarly. This is not
what people think. They don't just look at anti-Semitic either. They follow LGBT hate groups as well.
I've seen a little bit about anti-Native American as well.
Yeah.
And some actually also as anti-Asian, especially after COVID and all of that kind of stuff. So I just
after the president of the United States started calling it the
Wuhan flu, right?
Fucking clown. He should be a hate group all unto himself.
Well, there's a hate group of people who hate him.
I'm joining. Anyway.
Ron DeSantis, Donald Trump are the head of the snake. But you cut that head of the snake off, they still exist. Okay? This is not the strategy. You can't just get rid of them, throw Trump in jail. Listen, I want Trump in jail as much as anybody. I want Ron DeSantis out of politics as much as anybody. But just getting rid of them does not roll this back.
And leaving 170 members of the House in power
Insurrectionists, by the way.
Right, insurrectionists. By the way, let me say this. We started out with 147 before the midterms. We are up to 170 now, okay? Right. Yeah, we did a good job stifling the red wave, but we didn't do well enough. We lost the House, and we only increased the Senate by one person. That is not anything to be proud of. I'm sorry, it just isn't, okay?
Well, by the way, I didn't say this. I forgot to say this. A lot of the protest against Donald Trump wasn't his policy. It was the fact that he did not produce the red wave. So they think that DeSantis is the next guy that could potentially create this.
Yep.
If he doesn't do it,
they'll find someone else.
J.D. Vance, Kerry Lake, whoever it is.
Yep.
Okay. Don't think this is over. Don't think that DeSantis and Trump are the end-all be-all. You get rid of them, our problems are over. No, that's not the way this is going to work.
By the way, there are maggots in the Senate as well. They're not just in the House of Representatives. Okay, Ron Johnson is one of them.
We have former employees of Trump who are governors now. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, okay, who's an absolute train wreck horror show. All right, so we have to get out of it. By the way, I see it on Twitter all the time, and I mentioned it before. Who would be better? Who would be a better Republican candidate? Would this one be better? No one right now. Right. No one. It is all the same. You hear the same battle cries from every single Republican. And of those that complain about George Santos or complain about, how this whole anti-woke thing is too much, they're not doing anything about it.
Right. They're sound bites. That's all.
They're sound bites.
Mitt Romney looks good when he walks by George Santos and makes a comment to him. Mitt Romney was my governor. Okay.
Right.
He was the governor of fucking Massachusetts. Okay. He's not a moderate Republican. I can promise you that. The only reason he didn't get to do what he wanted to do here is because we had an overwhelmingly Democratic legislature like we always do. All right. Charlie Baker, who chose not to run again, was a moderate Republican that you could work with. Okay. End of story. Gone. He's gone. All right. So trust me, Mitt Romney, he ain't the answer either.
And we tout the Lincoln Project all the time, but we don't see the Republican Party rolling this back, because for them, it's being successful for them.
The Lincoln Project, they're not respected by the Republican Party. They're not. They consider them an enemy. So that's where we are, gang. Buyer beware. Get your voting shoes on. 2024 is coming.
Janet Prasiewicz.
April 4th.
April 4th, yep, of this year.
Let's start there. Okay, gang, we'll talk to you next week.
Wisconsin Supreme Court. Janet Prasiewicz. Just wanted to. Yep. So look it up. We have sources too.
Okay. Talk to you later.